So, hey everyone, welcome to another webinar, another session. What we're actually going to be doing in today's session is I've got a preparation again of some more books. And again, we did this before and I got a couple of emails to say that, it'd be good to do it again. So I want to share a couple of other books that have been beneficial for me and I've been reading recently, but equally hear anything from you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share a couple of books that I've been reading recently. And if you're not a reader, I'm also going to be sharing a couple of podcasts and also audiobooks. Let me know, guys, do any of you listen to audiobooks or do any of you listen to podcasts? Just say yes or no. For me, podcasts, audiobooks are amazing on my runs. It gives me my 45 minutes, my hour to listen. So Caroline does, a couple of other people potentially do. Some people like them, some people don't. I used to hate audiobooks. But let's start with audiobooks first. So I use Audible. I think I pay maybe $7.99, I believe it is, a month, and you get 1 credit a month. Little trick on Audible, guys, that I'll share with you. But don't share this with anyone else. On Audible, what you can do is you can buy a book for a credit, or you can obviously purchase the book. And Amazon/Audible make it really, really easy for you to refund that book. Right, so I just go in and I say, hey, this book didn't meet my expectations, or I bought this book as an error, or didn't really like the narrator. There's loads of answers that you can give, and within sort of seconds, you've now got a credit back in your account, so you can go and spend that on another book, right? And I'm not saying do this for every book, but sometimes, if there's a book that you haven't really got on well with, what you can do is you can, as I say, kind of refund that book. And you're going to be able to get a credit back for it. But what I really like about, so here you can kind of see in my account, I can come into purchase history, and then I can basically choose the book. And when I'm in the book, I can then go return title, and then it's going to refund the credit straight into my account, so I can go and buy another book. But in terms of my library, guys, I've been listening to quite a few audiobooks recently. I don't know whether you can see this properly. This one is really good, Empath. What I like about Audible in particular is there's a lot of books from authors or experts that they've just created the audiobooks themselves, right? So it's not a published book. It's not something you're going to walk into W.H. Smith and be able to buy, or Waterstones and be able to buy. But on Audible, you can typically find maybe experts or people that have shared, some of their own experience or something on there. And this one, I believe, is an example of that, this Empath book by a person called Victor Murphy. And this is really good for me because I'm an empath. I've spoken about this quite a lot as well. And it talks about the advantages of an empath, but also the disadvantages and understanding it a little bit more. And again, I think with mental health, when we understand it, when we have education around it, it helps us sort of utilize it a little bit more too. Wayne Dyer, I speak a lot about Wayne Dyer. He's got an ultimate library, which is all of his sort of best books. Unevered Soul is one of my favorite books that I've read. This is actually a lecture series, so you can get more stuff with it as well. And then there's a lot of sort of different business books. This is a good one, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, which is almost about like minimalism and almost spirituality and understanding that we don't need a lot of materialism to make us happy. And it talks about someone who was extremely stressed, overweight, unhealthy, had a heart attack because of a high pressure job. And then they actually become a monk, sold everything. And then sort of, they met up with them again and they were a completely different person because they'd released all of that ego and released all of those material items that we all kind of strive towards. But you can already see like my library is pretty extensive, like from business books to kind of, self-improvement books. New Earth is a really good book. The Courage to Be Disliked was a really good book as well. It teaches me to stop people pleasing all the time. There's loads and loads in there. But what I like again about, as I say, Audible is you can kind of listen to them on the go. This is entirely up to you guys, but what you can also do is you can put it on speed. So I put it on 1.5 speed, which speeds it up, but equally I can still listen and I can still understand as well. So audiobooks in terms of podcasts as well. Guys, how many of you listen to podcasts, and what podcasts would you recommend? Let me find a couple of podcasts I've been listening to recently. Happy Place. Nancy, is that I might have been completely wrong here. Is that Fern Cotton? Perfect. I haven't listened to that one. I'll have to check it out. And I know she does a lot of interviews with other people as well. And there's a bit of a focus on mental health there as well, as far as I'm aware. But it's a really good podcast. Pia says, Unlocking Us with Brene Brown, How to Fail with Elizabeth Day. The Elizabeth Day one sounds like the job interview, right, Pia? It's like, I'm sure, I don't know actually. You have to maybe let me know what it's about. But Jason Fox, yeah, he's doing some really, really good work as well, sort of in this space. A couple that I've been listening to recently, I'm just looking now. I use an app called Overcast. So on Overcast, again, you can kind of have all your podcasts in there. You can do this with Apple Podcasts or whatever. And again, I can listen to it on 1 times speed, 1.5, 2 times speed. Yeah, it's about how to learn and grow from failure, right? Meditation minutes. That sounds interesting. Is that a podcast, George? A couple of ones that I've always got on well with is The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes. So this guy here, School of Greatness by Lewis Howes, he does some really, really good interviews that kind of touches on self-improvement, self-help. Maybe there's a little bit of business thrown in there, but not all the time. It's about, what does greatness mean and how can we kind of achieve that? And everyone kind of shares their own personal experiences. That's helped me quite a lot recently, and I've listened to that. I've been listening to a lot of business podcasts, if I'm honest, that might not be relevant to you. The other one that I like in terms of self-improvement is, again, Dr. Wayne Dyer has a podcast, which is a lot of his audios that, might have been 10 years, 15 years ago, and they've made it into a podcast. There's so many there as well. Ant Middleton, Fear Bubble, the book is really good, despite he said a few questionable things recently. Yeah, I think he's made up for that as well, Caroline, right? George says it helps with stress relief through breathing, etc. Nice. So even in the app as well, guys, again, we're working on a couple of short breathing exercises, sort of meditation, shorter meditations as well. So it's not about kind of sitting down for 20 minutes and then being able to meditate. It's about these short little sessions as well. Comes out and apologizes, I'll let him off. Yeah, exactly. I want to share a couple of books that I've read over the last 6 months, maybe a year, maybe a little bit longer, and I'll talk about how they've kind of helped me too. I'll start with this one because I actually haven't properly read this, but I had this recommended to me. It's called The Choice, and it's by Edith Eger. I don't know how you pronounce it. And I don't normally read books like this. I did read a book called The Way of Men, I think it was. The Way of Men. And there's another book as well. And this is more of a storybook. It's more of a kind of her sharing her own personal experience. But what a lot of people have said about this book, and this is why I bought it, is I even like this. Even in hell, hope can flower. And what this is a personal story about her own personal experience of, the Holocaust and how she dealt with that and finding that strength, the resilience to kind of get through. And a lot of it comes from this last line, it shows that hope can flower in the most unlikely places. So I talk a lot about mental health and the importance of hope. If someone's in crisis, if someone's potentially suicidal, if someone is really, really struggling, and how we communicate with that person, a lot of it comes down to hope, right? It's about having that conversation with them, making them feel safe, making them feel comfortable to be able to talk to you. But we equally need to try and find that glimmer of hope. Have they said something? Have they spoken about a person? Have they spoken about something that they're looking forward to in the future during this conversation? And you're listening. Now, as soon as you get that 1% of hope, whether it's, a family member, someone they love, maybe it's a future prospect or whatever, we need to hold on to that hope, because then we need to remind that person of this hope. Because I always say, when someone is really struggling, it's hope that gets them through. And I think it was the book, I forgot. I think it was The Way of Man, The Way of Men, I think it was, where it says, when you have no meaning, you have no meaning to live. And I'm really, I always talk about hope. The reason why I got through, my darkest times, the reason why I get up and I want to sort of crack on with work and the mission that we're on and I'm on, and all of this is hope that it can get better. And when you hold on to that hope, it can get you through some really, really dark places. And equally, when I put that into perspective to what this lady's been through, she got through it through hope as well. And we often neglect the power of hope. So I'm really looking forward to diving into that. As I said, it was recommended a couple of times. This one, The Richest Man in Babylon. Have any of you guys read this? Just say yes or no. Have any of you guys read this? The Richest Man in Babylon. There's other books. There's other like different sort of books around this, because this is a really, really, really old book. But this, for me, in terms of money and the kind of financial mindset, has been the best book that I've ever read. And I've read quite a lot on them. So, there's another one that I was going to share. I've read quite a lot on them. But The Richest Man in Babylon, as I said, it was written, I don't know, ages ago. I don't know when. But when I first read it, I was like, this is strange, because the wording, the language that it uses, because obviously it was written such a long, long time ago. But really what I learned from this is it talks about how when it comes to abundance, when it comes to money, we are always living above our means, right? So, personally, I always talk about how when I was running my business and I was making, money, and I was still feeling quite insecure and still feeling quite, I was still struggling with the grief. I was making more money, but equally I was spending more money, right? So I would go from, say, £1,000 a month, and I was living off £1,000 a month at my mum's house, right? Just say something like that. And then it goes to £2,000 a month, £3,000 a month, £5,000 a month, whatever it is, right? Whatever you can get up to, for some people, £10,000, £100,000 a month. But whenever we hit these new targets, our lifestyle then always exceeds that, right? So we always do it, and we always do it. And what is the reason why we do it? Like, we could be living quite comfortably off £2,000 a month right now. But as soon as we then go and attain £5,000 a month, we almost say, now I can move my lifestyle to here. And then we're still in the same situation as we were before, right? We just got more bedrooms that we don't really use. We've got maybe a car that's sitting on the drive that's a little bit fancier. So now we're still striving for more, and we go and make £8,000 a month. But equally, we then find a way to make sure our lifestyle is an £8,000 a month lifestyle, right? And I was doing this, and I didn't know why I was doing this. And this talks a lot about it. It talks about a lean purse. It talks about just money in general, and abundance, and that mindset of abundance. And even though, like I said, it's quite a difficult book to read in terms of looking at financial sort of, a financial mindset, this has been one of the best books that I've ever read, because, as I say, it kind of looks at the basics behind finances in terms of, obviously, step-by-step guides that a lot of us read. And answering that question, guys, because a lot of people refrain from talking about money, right? And there's such a stigma and a silence around money. But how many of you would agree that finances and financial pressure has a massive impact on your mental health? Would you agree with that statement? That financial pressure, financial stress has an impact on how you feel, has an impact on your mental health as a whole. Would you guys agree with that? Because I know, personally for me, it's a massive, massive stressor. And even within the app, we're seeing a huge amount of people talk more about it and want more support on it. And I talk so much about mental health being sort of taught in schools, and mental health having to become compulsory, and mental health having to become a part of the education, the curriculum. But equally, I believe financial sort of education and money and all of that needs to become a huge part of the education system as well. Yeah, so everyone kind of agrees, because they equally sort of, fall hand in hand. Richard says, totally, I'm the only income in the house, a wife and 3 kids all dependent on me. And then, like that just adds a huge weight to your shoulders. It adds a huge pressure to your shoulders. And Richard, so many times in my case, right, where I'm the same, I've got 2 kids, I've got a wife now who doesn't work, because I've said to her, look, I can take this on full time, and I have that responsibility, and that pressure is on my shoulders. But equally, what I've learned, and this is why I'm managing it a little bit more now, is I had such anxiety, and I really struggled to be honest with my wife when I was struggling. The reason why I was feeling it hard to be honest to my wife when I was struggling, and I kind of buried it, I ignored it. I didn't want to tell her I was getting in debt. I didn't want to tell her that I wasn't making enough money for us to, go and get married in Italy. I had to kind of borrow it on credit cards and all of that. The reason why I wasn't honest with her was because as a man, I felt like I was letting my whole family down. I felt that, I was letting her down. So I didn't want to tell her. I wanted to just bury it, make it go away, but equally know that I'm going to have to deal with this on my own, right? I can't talk to anyone about it, but I'm going to deal with it on my own. And the best thing that I ever did with that is be honest with her. And now she kind of checks in. She's like, are we good? Are we okay? And I'm like, yeah, we're good, we're fine. And then if we are struggling, I can now sit her down and say, without the ego kicking in and without me feeling like a failure, and say, like, Amy, we're struggling right now. Maybe we need to refigure it. Ignoring these problems don't go away, and sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves as well. George says financial stress can make you emotionally and physically ill. 100% agree. So maybe we'll do a session on that, guys. Maybe we'll do a session on financial pressure and financial expectations. But like I said, kind of for now, Richest Man in Babylon is a great book. What's next? Ego. Dissolving the ego, realizing the self. This is a short little book that, again, I bought recently, but it's really good. Lots of what I've done is all about this, all about ego, right? How do we dissolve the ego? How do we not live our lives, driven by our own egos? And this is a good book. It talks again about releasing that ego, which I think is dramatically important. If you worry what people think of you, if you're almost having so much high expectations of yourself, if you are constantly sort of, exhausting yourself with feeling like you could do better, feeling like you're comparing yourself to others, I think anything about dissolving the ego, removing the ego is important. The other book, I'll just put it in here, guys, on the ego that helped me was A New Earth by, probably spelled his name wrong, Eckhart Tolle. That's been good. I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker, and then I want to hear any that you've sort of read. So think now, guys. Think, what have you read, and then be ready to share it. Anything by this guy, Dr. Wayne Dyer, really helps me. This is an old book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. But again, these books might not be good for you, but what they're good for me is the process, the principles in them are so simplistic. And sometimes it gives us like a new way of looking at what we believe and what we've been conditioned to believe. And, Wayne Dyer really, really sort of shares from personal experience. He's had his own problems in life, his own adversity, his own mental health challenges, but equally he's found a way during his life to simplify the process, to be able to live more peacefully. And he talks a lot about freedom and how we're all striving towards freedom. But that freedom really is kind of allowing ourselves not to be in control by our minds, but us controlling them in a way. And sadly, Dr. Wayne Dyer died, say, about 2 years ago now, maybe a little bit longer. But so many of these lessons are still out there, and I definitely recommend this one. But any other books with Wayne Dyer in them, this is a little bit different. I bought this book, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, maybe it was a little bit less. But Bounce by Matthew Syed. Really good book. This talks about the mentality that athletes get into, the mentality of Mozart, the mentality of Picasso, David Beckham, Roger Federer, the science of success. And it talks about, miraculous children. Do they exist? The placebo effect. It talks about kind of, visualization and the rituals that these people go through. And I think it's a really good book to kind of, just reference, because these people of a certain level of success, what have they done and what have they managed to do in terms of their mindset, their mental health, to be able to perform at that level consistently. And really a bigger takeaway that I turn from this is the visualization element of it. So many athletes, so many successful sports, people have visualization, techniques that they utilize, and they have rituals. Usain Bolt, for example, the way he enters a race is very ritualistic. It's very kind of structured. He has a ritual in his mind where he'll go and he'll sort of, approach the change rooms in a certain way. When he's in the change rooms, he'll do some visualization techniques. And there's been lots of science studies that have shown with visualization that they did this study where you hooked up, I'm terrible at science, but they hooked up machines to athletes, and they would run, they would sprint, and they would trigger the muscles contracting. So this machine would show that the muscles were contracting and how hard they were contracting. Then what they did is they did the same thing. They hooked up the muscles, they got the athletes to sit down, and then what they did is they told them to visualize themselves sprinting, visualize themselves running this race as fast as they possibly can with people around them, and then winning the race. And they sat there, they visualized it, and then equally the machine started to trigger the muscles moving again, and the muscles feeling it, and the muscles almost playing it out. And with visualization, often people think it's a bit hoo-ha and it's a little bit up there, but sports stars use it, professional athletes use it. They visualize themselves achieving, because then it almost becomes, in a way, whatever you want to believe, whether it's the universe or whether it just gives them that self-belief that they can obviously go ahead and win that race. It's an amazing sort of strategy to use. And a personal example, my brother is he's disabled. He's brain damaged from an accident he had a couple of years ago, and he's slowly recovering when it comes to his physical ability to be able to walk, move, etc. And he uses visualization so much, and even his physios are like, you need to visualize the muscles moving, the muscles contracting, you opening up your fingers, you kind of lifting your leg, and all of that. And he uses that visualization, and what we're finding, as soon as my brother can do it, and he visualizes it, and then as soon as he can physically do it, he never loses that. It's always there, and then he can get better and get better and get better. So some people think it's hoo-ha, but I think visualization is an amazing technique. And then the final one is this one, guys, which is a little bit different. The Tools of Titans. A guy called Tim Ferriss, he wrote one of my best business books called The 4-Hour Workweek. But this again is, Tim Ferriss has got an amazing podcast. And he basically has interviewed a lot of people, and he takes a lot of those tactics, routines, habits of world-class performers, and he puts them all within this huge book here. So this isn't a kind of like one-night read, but really, it's good to kind of look at all of these people that he's interviewed. Kevin Rose is here. And basically, he talks about, investing or whatever. And it's kind of looking at everyone who is interviewed, the key points that they've all said, and you can kind of go through and have a little look at that too. So guys, what books have you read recently that I can spend money on, or I can share? There's also one as well. I'm just going to find it because I need to order it. I've had it mentioned quite a lot recently, and I haven't properly looked into it. I need to find out if this is the right one, guys, but there's a book called The Happy Body. It might be this one. Well, hopefully you guys can still hear me. There you go. There's no affiliate link on that, so I'm not making money, but I'm going to buy this because I've heard a lot about it, called The Happy Body. It's a new way of looking at physical health, nutrition, how that impacts our mental health. And it basically says, all diets, the way we've almost been conditioned when it comes to nutrition and exercise is almost contrived to sell diets, to, make money for the food industry, etc. And this book kind of really brings it back to the basics, I believe, and talks about kind of posture, nutrition. And I've heard some people that are very, very skeptical about these kind of books talk very highly of it. So I'm going to buy it as well. Any books, guys? Caroline says, Ollie Ollerton, Battle Ready, Behind the Mask. That sounds cool. I have to look into that. Tyson Fury, Gypsy Boy. Mikey Walsh. Tyson Fury, I love Tyson Fury. Any other books, guys? I'm going to look into the Ollie Ollerton one now quickly, Caroline, when you say it. The other guy from SAS. Do you watch SAS, Caroline? Lots of practical exercises really help you to think and focus. Yeah, I think what I like about those three guys, Ant Middleton, is it Mark Fox, and this Ollie Ollerton, is, especially from a male perspective, is we look at these three guys and we're like, these guys are strong, right? These guys are tough. These guys are maybe what we look up to being able to achieve. That, if you're defining masculinity, you'd look at those guys and they'd be pretty much it, right? Because they've obviously, in their SAS and all of that, and the way they deal with people, etc. Very, very alpha. But now what I love about those three is they're very, very open about mental health now, right? And they're talking about the importance of knowing it's okay to be vulnerable. The knowing that, emotion and tears and crying and struggling with your mental health and talking about it is a part of masculinity too. It's a part of us being men. It's a part of us being human. And that's what I love about them three in particular, because they're showing a different light to masculinity and almost to that definition of an alpha male, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm going to buy his book as well, the Ollie Ollerton one. But again, there's so many ways of us learning, and I talk about it so much. Education. I think I've learned more in the last 8 years than I learned throughout my whole school life, right? And that isn't, me saying that I wasn't academic or that, my school was bad, my teachers were bad, but I'm learning stuff that I want to learn, that I'm passionate to learn. And when it comes to mental health, when it comes to us being able to deal with our own mental health or support others or whatever it is, we have to understand that education is a big part of that. The way that I dealt with my dad's demise, my dad's depression, leading up to my dad's suicide, was only with the education that I had up to that point, right? So my mum, my family, everyone, my brother, we were literally, my dad, we were all doing our best with the education that we had. But that education was pretty minimal because we didn't understand it. We never thought that mental illness would impact us. We never had that education. And we can scam around and try and get educated on it quickly, but there was still a big part of us that they're saying this will never happen. That will snap out of it because that was our education leading up to that experience. Whereas now I look at it and I realize the education that I now have gives me a different skill set to be able to look at it in a different way. And if that ever became a case again, I believe now with the education that I've got, I would deal with it a lot differently. And all we can ever do is deal with situations with the education that we have, the set of skills that we have, which is why I believe education is so important to try and improve and to try and grow as much as we possibly can. Cool, guys. So I'm just kind of ending it, maybe spend this week at some point in this week doing something for you. It's, again, that real kind of, we have to consciously do it, right? Because it isn't natural for any of us to self-care, to look after ourselves. So we have to force it on ourselves. So this week, try and force it on yourself to do something for you, to take that time out to relax, to de-stress, to do whatever you need to do, to maybe buy a book and spend some time reading that book this week, whatever it is, because we need to almost, as we say, consciously make that effort to look after ourselves, especially during this time as well. Cool. You're so amazing, guys. Really appreciate it. You've made me feel better today, which is great. Keep up the amazing work, and hopefully I'll see you all next Tuesday at 1 p.m. I'm trying to get a guest on next week to share their expertise as well. But like I say, I really appreciate you joining, and enjoy the rest of your week. See you soon, guys. Bye.